What's going on YouTube? Smart shoppers know that most of the time luxury vehicles share a number of common things with their mainstream siblings. And they also know that there are many improvements as well for those who are okay with spending the extra money. That's the case with the Honda Pilot and Acura MDX. And you're probably wondering, is the MDX worth the extra money? We were wondering that as well, which is why we're comparing them side by side to find out. Obviously, pricing is going to play a big role here, so let's talk about that right from the start. This is the fully loaded Pilot Elite all-wheel drive, which carries a price tag of $53,725 with no extra options and after destination. Moving to the MDX, we also have the fully loaded model, outside the performance-oriented Type S variant. The price premium for the extra luxury and prestige of the MDX Advance is perhaps less than you would think, with a total price of $65,595 all in. Now this is going to be an objective comparison. We've done our best to weigh the points awarded throughout in major and minor categories, but at the end of the comparison we will sum up with our thoughts and revisit the price difference for a value assessment. With that being said, let's get into the comparison. One of the main ways that mainstream and luxury models are differentiated is the exterior styling. That is the case with these two. As you can probably tell, the Pilot has a conservative and boxy design, while the MDX has a bolder and sportier design. MDX also has a huge badge to show off some of that prestige to others. Now, as far as the actual features, both of them have full LED lighting across the front, but the MDX has the more premium projector LED headlights instead of reflector ones on the Pilot. Checking out the sides, the Pilot is a tiny bit longer than the MDX. And even though they are both riding on front-wheel drive based architectures, the MDX has a bumped back A-pillar to give it more of a rear-wheel drive-like proportion compared to the Pilot. Adding to the designs are nice-looking 20-inch alloy wheels on both, and then around back we have exposed wipers and dual exhaust tips, although the taillights are not completely LED on the Pilot. But let's move beyond the designs and get into some of the important features and specs. Both models' mirrors are fully loaded with heating, power folding, auto dimming, and blind spot monitoring. Honda also takes care of passengers no matter what price you can afford, since the four main active safety systems are standard across all trims of both models. Towing for both models comes in at 5,000 pounds, but the warranties are different. Acura, being a luxury division, warranties their products a bit longer, at 6 years and 70,000 miles. Additionally, both brands recently added 2 years of complimentary maintenance. Alright, now we need to see the more important cabins before we take them out for a drive later in the comparison. But first,
when we finish filming a car review in the heat of July, Drew and I don't want to go through all the hassle of chopping, prepping, and fixing a meal.
we want to get back to making car reviews as quickly as possible, which is why we use Factor.
With Factor, we can skip all the cooking and the trip to the grocery store too, while getting the flavor and nutritional quality that we need to stay focused. These fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is quickly heat and enjoy.
Not to mention that there are 34 plus chef-prepared, dietitian-approved weekly options that promote a healthy lifestyle and feature premium ingredients such as broccolini, leeks, truffle butter, and asparagus.
Plus, the smoothies really come in handy for all of the early morning flights we take when we're traveling to see the latest cars.
So are you ready to try Factor? Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code CarConfections50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Again, that's factor75.com and code CarConfections50 to get 50% off your first Factor box.
But with that all said, it's time to get back to the review.
As we approach the vehicles, both models have the expected smart entry systems and remote start, although the Acura's key fob is much larger. Once you open up the doors and glance inside, there are not many similarities besides for both of them having the brown interior options. Let's address those seats first. The Pilot has real leather, and the MDX has high-end Milano leather with fancy stitching and piping. Adjustments are also ampler in the Acura at 16 ways versus 10 ways, although both seats are heated, ventilated, and have 3-person memory. Now once fully inside the cabins, you can begin to take in the kinds of differences we have in overall materials. How much this matters will depend on personal preference, but the MDX certainly elevates the cabin experience, with lots of leather, open-pore wood, metal speaker grills, and gloss black accents in places where the Pilot uses hard or soft-touch plastics. Now after startup, you'll see 2 full digital gauge clusters, although it is a smaller 10-inch one in the Honda instead of the 12.3 inches in the Acura. In addition, both have head-up displays with plenty of info. Coming back to the steering wheels, both are leather-wrapped and heated, although only MDX has power adjustment. Next up, we have the very important aspect of storage, which is a place where it doesn't pay to be fancy. Because of the MDX's complex center console arrangement, it has a large storage disadvantage to the Pilot with its huge console, front bin, and even passenger storage shelf. One of the only shared parts in these cabins are the push-button electronic shifters. When in reverse, they both pull up 360-degree camera systems and 360-degree parking sensors. As far as climate controls, both have physical controls for 3-zone automatic systems, and they have real volume knobs for the audio systems. While the Pilot's 12-speaker Bose is a big improvement over the unbranded system in the previous generation, the MDX's ELS 3D system is the far better option for people who are audiophiles. And now that brings us to the infotainment systems, and there's something important to mention here. While the Pilot has the smaller 9-inch display compared to 12.3 inches, it is a touchscreen, while the MDX requires you use the finicky touchpad to control it. Minus the control complications, both systems can run Android Auto or Apple CarPlay wirelessly. Moving above the screens, both have auto-dimming rearview mirrors with HomeLink and panoramic sunroofs. Regardless of the badge on the front, both models usually service families, so let's talk about what you get in the back as well. Starting with space, the mainstream Pilot has both a legroom and headroom advantage of about 6%. While that might not sound like much, it definitely makes a noticeable difference, especially when considering that you can't easily slide your feet under the seat in the MDX. Next, let's check out the rear amenities. Both have sunshades, rear climate controls, 2 charging USB ports, a household power outlet, and reclining seats. The second rows are heated, but not ventilated. One neat feature that the Acura debuted, and the Pilot has since borrowed, is the multi-function center seat. This is a bench seat by default, but it has the ability to flip down into a console and even be removed entirely if you want a pass-through. Moving on to the third row seats, both crossovers have the same convenient one-touch folding and sliding mechanism to give you a nice pathway. But once in the third row, there are substantial differences between the two of them, and probably not in the ways you would expect. Favor falls to the Pilot, with 11% more legroom and 5% more headroom, most importantly. That makes a big difference for comfort, and it's also down a third row seat compared to the Pilot, making the max capacity 7 passengers instead of 8. Thirdly, though both have USB ports, it's the MDX that is surprisingly missing climate vents compared to the Pilot. Now, opening up the Smart Power tailgates, you will find a much larger space discrepancy than you would think given the very similar lengths. The Pilot is going to have the advantage with the seats in all three configurations, behind the third row, second row, and about 20% more maximum cargo space with all the seats folded down. Both third rows are manually folding, by the way. But now, let's go ahead and take this fight to the streets. While there are substantial differences in design, technology, and space, there are a lot more similarities in the areas you cannot see. Both have a new but very traditional 3.5-liter V6 with a small power discrepancy due to premium fuel being requested in the Acura. As you would expect, that means they both accelerate the same in the real world. Alright, so taking off with this MDX, the thing that people love, or one of the things that people love most about it, is just having a smooth and powerful V6 powertrain, and that does continue for 2024. Like we mentioned at the spec dump, you're looking at a 3.5-liter V6. It's going to be making 290 horsepower, 267 pound-feet of torque. So those are good and healthy numbers for this segment of vehicle.
Very
so
nice.
There's a quick burst of acceleration here in the all-new Pilot. So, as we have stated previously, the most powerful Honda Pilot ever. Now, it's not by a ton. It's actually just by 5 horsepower, but nevertheless, it still does have that new 3.5-liter V6 engine, 285 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque. And guys, I think this is probably important to you, at least from the comments we see from you guys and down below. It's got to be 6 still.
Yeah.
And a lot
it
of
is still
things
smooth and refined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of the competition is moving to 4-cylinder turbos, including probably the Pilot's biggest competitor, which I would say is the Toyota Highlander. Now, as far as the other powertrain elements, both are using Honda's in-house designed 10-speed automatic transmission and torque vectoring all-wheel drive systems. The all-wheel drive systems are very similar, even though they have different branding and different tuning in the Acura's case focused on cornering abilities.
Such a refined sound. And just a reminder of what Drew said in the spec dump earlier, all MDXs will come with standard 10-speed automatic transmission, and most of your trims will have front-wheel drive and SH all-wheel drive available, but the A-Spec and the Advance will come with standard super handling all-wheel drive.
Honda has made some big improvements in this area compared to the previous generation. As you might remember, we used to have a 9-speed ZF-sourced automatic transmission. That one had, some issues with kind of shift quality, basically. Now we've got a 10-speed automatic transmission, and this is a Honda-developed transmission. Now let's get into the ride qualities, which is very important for these kinds of family SUVs. There are certainly similarities here as well, since both are extremely comfortable. Even without air suspension or adaptive dampers, both remove all but the largest imperfections from penetrating the cabin. Now, I kind of talked about it a little earlier, but I do want to revisit the ride quality just to really hammer in how comfortable this is. It is insanely comfortable. The way they've tuned the suspension here on the Advanced model, you just kind of feel like you're floating down the road, and when you see potholes and stuff like that, it just absorbs it nicely. This is not an air suspension. You can get the air suspension on the Type S, but totally unnecessary. If comfort is what you're really looking for, this has got it in spades.
But I do want to talk about your ride quality, because that, of course, is a big thing with the Honda Pilot. This is a family 3-row SUV. So how does it ride? Well, here in the Elite trim level, I am super happy with the ride quality. The seat's incredibly comfortable. We're about to go over a bridge. It just really soaks it up. This is a fantastic riding vehicle. Of course, this segment is known for being good riding, so it needs to have that characteristic, and the Pilot definitely does.
I will also note that while neither are sporty by any stretch of the imagination, the MDX does handle in a more responsive way. Another aspect of comfort is sound insulation, so let's look at the decibel readings. For now, the readings are not directly comparable, since the only Pilot we have tested out in Kentucky was an LX trim. But based on our fine-tuned ears, we think the MDX would still be quieter.
And speaking of the noise level entering into the cabin, we want to do one of our Car Confections signature elements, which would be our sound level reading, so we can see how it compares to some of its rivals.
Let me make sure I'm going exactly 55 miles an hour. Now do keep in mind, we are in Sedona, Arizona, so the road texture is not exactly the same as it would be in Kentucky, but we're going to go ahead and give this a try right now.
.6 is our official Car Confections reading.
All right, we're going to be at 53.9 decibels. And for any of you who may doubt the accuracy of our readings, this is the exact same reading as we got on the 23 Acura MDX. So here's the consistency
right.
in this 2024 model.
Well, that's a very good reading as well. Certainly ranks quite nicely as far as in the segment.
Yep, it is still going to put itself at the most quiet in this class.
Lastly, for fuel economy, the Pilot and MDX share the exact same fuel economy rating. As mentioned earlier, the MDX is requesting premium fuel, but it is not necessary unless you desperately want those extra couple horsepowers. Neither of them offer hybrid or plug-in hybrid variants. Before we wrap things up here with the conclusion, I'll mention that price difference again. The MDX rings in at $11,870 more expensive than the Pilot, which would give the Honda 5.5 points according to our scale. As always though, I'll remind you that if money doesn't matter as much to you, then feel free to just disregard this part. So there you have it. The objective winner is the Honda Pilot. But who is your winner? Well, the MDX should be your winner if what you value the most is having a luxury nameplate with some prestige. Of course, you're not going to get that with a Honda, and you will get that with an Acura. You also would choose the MDX if you want that extra tier of, let's call them bougie things, you know, the top-notch audio system, for example, the best materials where you have the extra wood, the aluminum, the things you don't really need in life, but you might want.
Yeah, and you would pick the Pilot if you value ultimate functionality as well as that affordable price tag. And by what I mean by functionality is that this Pilot is actually the more practical option than the MDX. It's bigger on the inside, you have more second row space, you have more third row space, and more cargo capacity, not to mention more storage on the inside. So you are paying a little bit of a price when it comes to the practicality for choosing the MDX. And of course, it is more expensive. So that's just something
Obviously
to consider. But that's where we're going to leave off on this comparison video between the Honda Pilot and the Acura MDX, guys. If you enjoyed watching this video and found it helpful in your purchasing decisions, we would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below. By subscribing, you're going to have access to a lot of different automotive content that you won't want to miss out on. And if you're already a part of this family, thank you so much for your continued support because it really does mean a lot to us. Anyway, we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.